Hello, and welcome to Same Crime, Different Time. I'm Jennifer Chambers. You know that I'm passionate about uncovering the truth. Here, we're taking that passion to the dark heart of the Pacific Northwest. As a true crime and historical writer, I've spent years immersed in the chilling archives of this region. Each week, we'll explore cases, both ancient and modern, of murder, unexplained events, strange places, and those who have simply vanished. We'll dig into the research, connecting the dots between past and present, revealing the threads of mystery that weave through our incredible, yet often unsettling, landscape. Prepare to be captivated as we discover that while times may change, the darkest aspects of human nature remain hauntingly the same. Tacoma, Washington, 1986. 2 girls, 2 parks, 2 ordinary days that began the same way. A bike ride. A walk through the grass. And then, nothing. Though months apart, their lives would end in the same city under the eerily similar circumstances. No one knew who killed them. One headline at the time captured the fear spreading through the community. Quote, Tacoma is gripped by fear as 2 young girls are found slain in city parks. Today we're telling both of their stories because to understand one, you have to understand the other. Part 1. Michella. March 26th, 1986. 12-year-old Michella Welch heads to Puget Park. She and her sisters are playing together there in the park that day. Michella decided to ride her bike home so that she could bring back lunch to the adjacent picnic area for all 3 of them. Her sisters went to play in another area, a gulch, while she was gone. It was a normal afternoon. It was the kind of day that defined childhood in the 1980s. It was freedom and independence and time spent outdoors. But Michella never came back. Her bike was parked near the picnic area when her sisters got back from playing in that gulch area, and the sandwiches were even laid out for them, all ready for lunch on the picnic table. But Michella was gone. Her sisters looked and looked for her. Then they told their babysitter, who told their parents, and official search efforts began quickly. But then the unthinkable. Her body was found in the park only about a quarter of a mile away from the girls' picnic spot. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled. The autopsy on the next day, March 27th, found that her death had occurred also from blunt force trauma to the head. Evidence was collected via swabs from the scene and stored for later use. Newspapers described the shock in stark terms. Quote, the slaying of a Tacoma schoolgirl has stunned the community and launched an intensive police investigation. At first, it felt like an isolated tragedy. But it wasn't. Part 2. Jennifer. August 4th, 1986. 13-year-old Jennifer Bastian rode her bike onto the Point Defiance Park. She was preparing for a cycling trip. She left a note at home. She planned to come back that evening. And witnesses later say that they recall seeing her ride all along back and forth 5-mile drive, which goes around the park. But then she disappeared. By nightfall, her parents called the police. Search teams moved into the park. They closed off the whole park and searched extensively. But this time something is different because Tacoma had seen this before. Part 3. A pattern emerges. 2 girls, both in parks, both taken in daylight, both found murdered. The similarities were impossible to ignore once they found Jennifer's body. And the fear was immediate. One report at the time noted, quote, parents are warning children to stay close to home as concern grows over a possible connection between the killings, unquote. People said that was the moment when Tacoma began to change. Before 1986, children rode their bikes all the time. Everybody kind of wandered freely through the town. People didn't lock their doors. It was as much a product of the time as it was the area. But they walked to those places alone. They explored by themselves. And after these murders, that sense of safety in the community began to disappear. There were all kinds of letters to the editor and all different kinds of articles about it in the newspapers of the time. Nobody understood quite what was happening. Part 4, Discovery. It took a while, but weeks after Jennifer vanished on August 4th, 1986, a jogger made a devastating discovery near 5 Mile Drive where she'd last been seen. There was a very strong smell in the area by August 28th, and people had started to complain. That was almost a month after she had disappeared. Her body had been hidden in the woods. Those who investigated found it was really strange. The area where she was discovered looked like some care had been taken in staging it and getting the area ready before she was killed, like premeditation style. She had also been strangled and she'd been sexually assaulted, like Michella. The connection felt undeniable. And newspapers began to ask the questions everybody was thinking. Quote, are Tacoma's park killings the work of one man, unquote? But investigators didn't yet have an answer. Part 5, the investigation. Police launched massive investigations into both cases, of course. Hundreds of leads and thousands of hours, witness reports and composite sketches, but no arrests. And in 1986, that one crucial piece is missing. DNA analysis, as we know it today, doesn't yet exist. It's great that I've been able to talk about these cases recently that have been solved with the power of DNA. It's incredible to think that these little microscopic, tiny things that aren't visible to the naked eye can solve cases. Imagine what Sherlock Holmes would have thought, right? But the evidence was collected and stored and cataloged, and luckily enough, even though it wasn't fully understood, it was held on to. One later reflection on the case would note, quote, investigators pursued every lead, but the technology of the time just limited what could be proven, unquote. Those cases went cold. Years passed and then decades. Part 6, why these crimes happened. When investigators started to step back, patterns did begin to emerge. Both the girls were alone, they were in large public parks, they had wooded areas with easy concealment, and they were places that felt safe, but also offered isolation. Criminologists describe this as a, quote, crime of opportunity within a familiar environment, unquote. That makes sense. The offender likely knew these parks, knew the terrain, knew where the visibility dropped off, and knew when these people would be vulnerable. But there's something else. These crimes do reflect that shift that was happening in the 1980s. The rise of what we now understand as stranger-perpetuated child abduction and murder. Stranger danger. I grew up in the 80s, I get it. It's rare that it actually happens, but it's deeply impactful because those things change behavior far beyond the crime itself. After 1986, Tacoma families became more cautious, more watchful. Childhood independence began to shrink. And I'll have to do a deep dive. I wonder why, as a society, that time, it seemed to happen not just in Tacoma, but everywhere. I've seen mentions of that, and certainly in my own experience, it seemed like it wasn't just a death of childhood, or of innocence, but the entire world had a different kind of awareness, and people felt emboldened. So those crimes occurred more often, or maybe we just knew about it more. It's interesting to think about. Part 7, the breakthrough. For more than 30 years, both of those cases remained unsolved. But they weren't ever forgotten. They preserved the evidence, and technology continued to evolve, while DNA testing advanced. Forensic genealogy emerged, and we've seen this in other cases. Hope comes if we just hold on, sometimes. In 2006, DNA in Michella's case was tested to form a profile At that time, unfortunately, there wasn't a match found, but her information stayed in the system, waiting for a hit. In 2011, a special cold case group was formed that could look at both of these kinds of cold cases, among other cold cases, and it included people like the FBI, the Tacoma Police Department, the Pierce County Prosecutor's Office, where Tacoma was located, according to a newsflash article by Pierce County itself and the city of Tacoma. Several dedicated policemen and investigators continued to search, even after they retired. All their effort came through in 2013 when they were able to find semen in Jennifer's swimsuit and then collect it for future comparison. They made a persons of interest list based on interviews in 2016 and then set out to contact and collect DNA from everyone on that list. It took a while, but finally there were some answers. In 2018, investigators identified Gary Hartman as Michella Welch's killer. He had been caught in a really ingenious way. The DNA in Michella's case was tracked through genetic genealogy at Parabon Nanolabs to reverse build a family tree for the suspect. This is stuff that happens in the movies, but it's true. They were able to trace the DNA back to identify a pair of brothers who lived in Tacoma during 1986 and had enough similarities matching on the DNA to question. They then narrowed it down even more to one of the brothers and kept him under surveillance. Gary C. Hartman went to his job at Western Hospital one day and then he went to get breakfast. At the restaurant, he ate breakfast while a plainclothes detective sat only 10 feet away from him. When he was done, Gary Hartman used a napkin multiple times, and then he threw it away and clothes in his paper bag. They don't say in the articles I read, but I think of it as being like a McDonald's. If he's got a paper bag, it's not like he is being served, so he's probably taking it with him. And that would preserve it. So the detective had the employee who was working in that section that they were in, bring him the bag as they were cleaning the area. It was then tested, and the DNA matched the DNA connected from Michella's crime scene. And in another scene, almost from a movie, Gary Hartman was arrested at a traffic stop. I imagine that scene. He was then arraigned on suspicion of first-degree murder and first-degree rape. Hartman was convicted of Michella Welch's murder at a bench trial. He waived his right to a jury trial and had a bench trial that was only presided over by the judge. It was revealed that he had been seen talking to Michella and pointing to an area in the park near the Gulch area, which may have been where she was killed. His trial lasted less than 2 hours. His lawyers revealed that the horrific abuse he himself had endured in his childhood and that he had an alcohol and pill addiction at the time of the murder. So that he had no idea, he said, that he had killed someone until much later. Hartman got sober later on in his life. He had 4 marriages and 2 daughters of his own. He worked as a registered nurse. I very much hope I didn't read anything about his daughters. I hope for their own safety. The prosecuting attorney said that, quote, Hartman sensed the police surveillance prior to his arrest and told a coworker 30 years ago he'd done something terrible and he thought he had been discovered, unquote, according to the News Tribune. Hartman, who was 70 years old at the time of sentencing, got 26 years, 6 months in prison, which was an effective life sentence for him. Shortly after, that same year, Robert Washburn was identified as Jennifer Bastian's killer. He had been linked to the DNA found on Jennifer, and he was found where he had been living in Illinois and extradited back to Oregon. The article by Pierce County states, quote, excuse me, quote, Washburn was on the list because following the disappearance of another young girl, Michella Welch, earlier in March of 1986, he called in a tip about a composite sketch that was shown in the Welch case. When interviewed in December 1986 regarding his original tip, he placed himself in the park the day Jennifer disappeared and admitted frequenting the trail, sorry about that, where her body was found. So he put himself there. He had told police at the time that he saw a man, quote unquote, jogging near the park where Michella had been killed, which was Point Defiance Park. So these are two different parks. It's a little bit confusing, but it's in the similar area in Tacoma, but two different parks. According to his police statement, Washburn said in August 1986, he had seen Jennifer and grabbed her by the arm when he saw her in Puget Park. He dragged her into the woods, he raped her and strangled her, and then concealed her. He pled guilty, he said, to spare Jennifer's family from having to relive everything at trial. And he didn't speak, he spoke through his representative. His sentence was 320 months, which was another effective life sentence. Two different men, two separate crimes, one devastating coincidence. This community feared a single predator, but instead there had been two. Part 8, Justice. Those arrests came more than 30 years after the murders. I cannot imagine for the families it was the end of a long and painful wait that spanned generations. One reflection noted, quote, "The cases that once seemed lost to time were finally solved through advances in science," unquote. But in justice, when it comes this late, it's pretty complicated. It brings answers, but not closure in the way we might hope. Those kinds of men still prey on children in all different areas of our country, all the way up to the highest. These two girls had two families, and it was two ordinary days. But instead, it became part of a story that changed a city. But it revealed something a little deeper, because even when those cases go cold, there's a little bit of hope. They're not gone. They wait in evidence rooms and files and in the minds of investigators who work tirelessly until one day, technology catches up and truth comes back. Not in all cases, but Jennifer Bastian and Michella Welch were both children who should have grown up, and their stories ended too soon. But they weren't forgotten. And in the end, they were not lost to history. Thank you for listening to Same Crime, Different Time. These are just two of the stories of children, particularly young children, that are killed by predators every day. I try not to report on kids too often. It's really hard to research about, and I'm sure hard to listen to, but it's important to remember their stories and their names. They were kids with lives and families and joy. Until next time, hug your kids and those you love, and keep yourself safe. All the sources are on the website for this episode. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening today. Please review and rate wherever you listen to podcasts. That really helps out the show. And please leave us a voicemail at the Spotify link. Also, you can always feel free to send us an email at scdtmail@gmail.com or www.jennifer-chambers.com.